Your friendly neighborhood YouTuber is rated PG-13. Parental advisory, explicit content, viewer discretion is advised. Over the past year, Mcfarlane has released some great figures. Along with the praise comes the hate. Today we're going to take a look at how Mcfarlane is doing over a year later and how he measures up with his other predecessors, such as Essentials, Collectables, Direct, and, of course, Mattel. Stay tuned. Hey, what's up everyone? It's your friendly neighborhood YouTuber, guys. Alright, so here we are back with another video. Okay, so today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a kind of like a versus episode. If you guys are familiar with my channel, you guys know I do a lot of versus episodes. But today, it's going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be between characters or different figures from different toy companies. It's actually going to be different toy companies battling each other, and we're going to take a look at some of DC's best figures from each lines. For instance, we have Mcfarlane, some of the best figures I think he's made. I just chose a few what I think are good. We have Mattel right here, just a couple figures I pulled out, a couple of my favorite figures I pulled out from my DC collection just to do some comparisons. We have some Essentials, we have some Direct, and we have Collectables right over there. So we're going to take a look and examine the DC figures, and we're going to take a look at Mcfarlane as well, up close and personal look, should I say, at Mcfarlane, because along with the praise, Mcfarlane has received a lot of hate. So we're going to compare some of the Mcfarlane figs to Multiverse, to Essentials, Direct, Collectables, four of my favorite DC lineups, and we're going to see if Mcfarlane is doing a good job. We're going to put some of his best figures up against some of these other three toy lineup figures. So let's take a look at one of his first releases. So we'll take a look at this Superman right here. One of my favorite figs, son of a bitch. So here is Superman right here. So let's take a look at Superman. Okay, so this Superman is really good. I think it's one of the best Superman figures I think ever produced, next to maybe NECA. A lot of people say NECA should take over the DC license. I mean, I don't think they should take it over. I would love to see NECA produce some DC figures, but at the same time, can DC produce some of these great figures for around the $20 mark? Or would you have better quality figures from NECA if you were to pay an extra another $20 and end up paying maybe $30, $40 for a DC figure if it was better quality? You know what I mean? So just because the figure cost a little bit more doesn't mean it's necessarily the best quality. For example, we'll take a look at, we'll compare Superman with Nightfall Batman. This is from DC Essentials. Now you look at the overall quality. You can go ahead and get into the articulation or the lack thereof with DC Essentials. But you cannot look past the beautiful sculpt that this Batman is. I mean, compared to Mcfarlane, it pretty much has the same articulation, with the exception of he does have some thigh cuts right here, and he does have somewhat of a little boot swivel. That's something that Mcfarlane doesn't do on his DC figures. If you guys are accustomed to watching my channel, you guys heard my complaints about Mcfarlane, no thigh cuts and no boot swivel. I think almost every Mcfarlane figure that I reviewed doesn't have that. But nonetheless, here's the comparisons. So this DC Essential Batman, Nightfall Batman. He retails like around 30 bucks. Okay. He's a sought after Batman figure. He's a very nicely done Batman figure. Probably one of the best Batman figures I think done in recent times. Actually, I'll break out the other Batman figure, Mcfarlane Batman figure that's similar to this, and I'll do a little bit of a comparison. So, just for the hell of it, I broke out the Multiverse Dark Knight Batman because essentially he's rocking the same colors. So here is the Mcfarlane Batman right here. This is the Nightfall Batman. Essentially, they are the same damn figure because they're rocking the same color. They're rocking the gray, the blue, and the yellow. And as much as I like this Mcfarlane Batman, which is a great Batman, it's just kind of a repaint of the black and gray version Batman. I really like the Batman, but is he as good as this one? My answer is no. He's good, but I don't think he's better than the Nightfall Batman. Articulation-wise, this guy is really solid. They used a different plastic. It's a heavier plastic on this Batman right here, this Nightfall Batman. And also, but one thing I love about this Batman is the flexibleness of this Batman. He has a completely different plastic. He's just much more articulated than this Batman back here. He's a nice Batman, but I think I like the overall darker tones of this Batman right here. The darker gray, the darker blue, even the darker yellow. But this Batman is not bad. Now, in context, you take this Batman and put him next to this Superman, and yeah, they look great together. They look like they belong together. They're the same size, the same height. But then again, you take Nightfall Batman and you put him next to Superman, and yeah, it looks, I think, even better standing next to this Batman. So, as far as Essentials are concerned, I think Essentials, DC Essentials is one of my favorite lines. So let's bring him back in, Batman right here, Nightfall Batman. This is the Mattel version. This is the Dark Knight version, but essentially the same Batman. He has the gray and yellow and blue wardrobe going on. Great looking Batman. Very buff Batman. Very buffy Batman. Great looking Batman. The sculpt is great. The cape is great. The head sculpt is great. But if you look at the anatomy, this is more like an animated version of this guy, where this guy is more realistic, you know what I mean? Same thing with this Batman. He's more of a, looks like more of an animated version of Batman, where Nightfall Batman is a more realistic version of Batman. But there's a little bit of a comparison for you guys, as far as Mattel, Mcfarlane, and Essentials goes, as far as Batmans are concerned. So, I think Mcfarlane does some great figures. He does some great Batmans. But this one in particular, Essentials Batman, is probably one of my favorite Batman figures, even though Mcfarlane has released some great Batman figures. We have another Essentials right here, Flash, awesome Flash figure. This guy reminds me of my childhood. Never picked up the Mcfarlane version, maybe in the future, but I never needed a reason to pick up the Mcfarlane version because DC Essentials did such an amazing job with this Flash figure, as you guys can see right there. And to see how he looks with the Mcfarlane Superman, yeah, looks great, even standing next to the Mcfarlane Superman. I mean, if you guys didn't know, if you guys weren't toy collectors and you didn't know the toy companies and you put all these figures together, it wouldn't really matter, right? So there is Superman. So I think all these lines, they have something awesome to offer as far as figures are concerned. Let's break out another Mcfarlane fig. So here's another one of my favorites. This is Red Hood. So all the people that are complaining about Mcfarlane, I mean, I'm breaking out some of his best figures I think he's ever done. And this Red Hood is probably one of the best, if not the best, Red Hood that's been produced so far. Great, sleek look, athletic look. The guns look great. The head sculpt looks great. Everything about this Red Hood is perfection. We'll compare him to Multiverse. Here is Multiverse Mattel. This is another Multiverse figure, but this, of course, this is based on Batman Returns. It's the Danny DeVito Penguin. And you see the comparisons. Of course, this is Mattel. This is some of the best work that they've done. So I'm breaking out some of the best work that Mattel has done, and you can see the detail. They used a different plastic, of course. This penguin is clothed right here. One of my favorite DC figs ever, from one of my favorite movies ever. And then you look at the comparisons, and really they both are just great figures from different toy companies. Mcfarlane did a great job with this Red Hood, as he did with the Penguin. We bring in Killer Croc. Let me raise up my camera just a little bit, because Killer Croc is a big guy. So here's Killer Croc with Red Hood. This is Mattel. So this was the last Build-A-Figure from Mattel right here. Listen, a great Build-A-Figure. Compared to some of Mcfarlane's Build-A-Figures, he's not... He doesn't really compare, but he's in a different format. You know what I mean? There's something different about this guy. He's more from an animated take. So, but there's Killer Croc with Red Hood. For example, we'll take another Mcfarlane figure, and this one, of course, is based on the video game right here. This is the Joker. And of course, he's not based on a real person. They're not trying to make him realistic. They're just trying to make this Joker make him look like what he's from, which is based on the video game. So both great figures. They're from completely two different lineups, two different companies, but yet they go together so very well. And Mcfarlane, for those who are complaining, I think this is one of Mcfarlane's best releases. This Joker is done very nicely done. This is one of his first releases. And the Joker is done really nice. Let's break out some other Build-A-Figures, and we'll do some more comparisons. Alright, so speaking of, well, not so much a Build-A-Figure, but I'll have to raise my camera up just a little bit more because this guy is big as well. Here is the other version of Killer Croc. This is from, of course, based on the video game Arkham Knight or Arkham City. This is the Killer Croc right here. Listen, he's just as great. This is from DC Collectables right here. So he's just as great as Killer Croc. This Killer Croc, Mattel Killer Croc, just a different version. This is the video game. This is more based on like an animated version of Killer Croc. Both equally good figures. If you want a more realistic version of Killer Croc, this Killer Croc definitely is a more realistic version. But this Killer Croc is really awesome as well. The Mattel Killer Croc is just as awesome as DC Collectables. Let's do another comparison with some more big guys. We'll keep it in the Mattel. And then we'll break out Mcfarlane. So here is Devastator. He's a different version of Doomsday, but essentially he is Doomsday. He's just a mixture of Doomsday and Batman. But anyways, here's the Build-A-Figure Doomsday, and you just look at the difference. I mean, this Mattel, for what he is, he's really great, and he's still expensive on the market. He's still going for $60, $70 on the market. This guy, you can pretty much find anywhere. Mcfarlane has listed him at 20 bucks. If you look for a customized version of this Devastator, I've seen him online where people have turned him into Doomsday, and he's going for around the same price, 70, 80 bucks. But you look at the detail, and you look at what we've had. This is from Mattel, and then we go to Mcfarlane. I think Mcfarlane's version is way better, is way superior. Not to take away anything from Mattel. Mattel is more of a kid's toy nowadays. Nowadays, you know, if this guy was released, this is how he would look if he was released as a kid's toy, you know, 6 and under, where this is more adult collectible friendly, where this is 11 and above as far as age goes, as far as collecting. But you see the differences. So yeah, people who are complaining about McFarlane, just take a look at Mattel. Take a look at what we had, and you see the differences right there. Great figure by Mattel, but McFarlane, obviously, I think is a superior figure. Okay, now that brings me to Bane. Here is DC Collectables. This is, of course, based on the video game. Great figure, but the articulation for this figure, and a lot of DC Collectables, especially for based on the video game, the articulation is just crap. You look at this guy right here. He's a different version of Bane. He's from a different multiverse. But he comes with this scarecrow on the back. It's a Build-A-Figure. Awesome McFarlane piece. I definitely think this guy is awesome. Yeah, he could have had a little bit more of a wash. That's one thing about McFarlane is the lack of paint apps. The paint apps are very clean, but there's just a lack of paint apps on a lot of these McFarlane figs. But for what he is, he's just a great looking figure. And also there is another version of this Bane figure, a bigger version from, I believe, the sequel to Arkham City, Arkham Knight, who is actually much bigger and actually looks way better than this guy right here. But this just gives you an example of this Bane, and that's how they look. So there's the two Banes. This is McFarlane, this is DC Collectables, and you guys see the difference right there. So speaking of DC Collectables, we'll bring in another video game inspired figure. I don't have the McFarlane Azrael. Never wanted to pick him up. Maybe I'll pick him up eventually, but of course this one's based on the video game, and you see the detail. So these DC Collectables that's based on the video game just has amazing detail. They actually gave wash on these figures. Like I said, they're not the greatest articulated figures, but nonetheless, he's just a great figure overall. This DC reminds me of an older McFarlane figs, how McFarlane used to do his figures before he came out with, you know, these figures that you see in front of you right now. But just overall, great. Speaking of DC, we'll move these out the way right here. DC Collectables, should I say. Here's another favorite piece of mine. This is a Greg Capullo version. So for those who are not familiar with Greg Capullo, Google it. So here's Greg Capullo. This is Mr. Freeze. I think one of the best Mr. Freezes ever done. I'm a big fan of Greg Capullo. For those who are not familiar with Greg Capullo, he's done a lot of artistry in general. You guys may know his name. He's synonymous with McFarlane as far as being one of the artist for Spawn. He's done other art as well besides Spawn. Actually, he's done work for DC, artistry for DC, and this is just a great take on Mr. Freeze. And the helmet does it is removable. The face sculpt is really done nicely. Great Mr. Freeze. Speaking of Greg Capullo, I don't have any Greg Capullos at the moment. Let me see if I can find any more Greg Capullos for you. Okay, here's another Greg Capullo. This is Two-Face right here. Probably one of the best Two-Face figures I think ever done. This is, I do believe, this is Collectables as well. This is Greg Capullo based on the design of Greg Capullo. Great figure. One of my favorite Two-Faces. That's one of the reasons why I have this Two-Face. Here's another Greg Capullo Batgirl right here. One of the best Batgirls I think ever done. Let's do a comparison of her and McFarlane Batgirl. So there is the McFarlane comparisons right there. Obviously you can see the difference. McFarlane has a little bit of a different take on this Batgirl. Of course she's more articulated because she's probably, well actually she is newer. But I think the design, the Greg Capullo design, is just much more sleeker. The face sculpts, I did a comparison when I did a review of this Batgirl, where she's more of like a teen version of Batgirl. She's more of like a MILF version of Batgirl. But both, I think, are equally done. They're both equally good in their own right. The hair is done nicely. Of course, she's wearing the mask. She's just has the mask over the face, where she has like the helmeted version. I think that makes sense. But yeah, both equally good, but I think as far as my favorite Batgirl, I think I would have to stick with Greg Capullo, even though this Batgirl right here is done very nicely. Speaking of more Greg Capullo, let's take a look at DC, is it DC Collectables? I think I'm still with DC Collectables. So here's DC Collectables. Here's some more DC Collectables right here. So this right here is Beast Boy. This is done by Terry Dodson. This is Greg Capullo as well with the Riddler. Just overall great figures, man. Some of the best figures that I have in my entire collection. That goes for anything. But the detail on them and the paint that they use, the plastic that they use, you can tell it's quality plastic, quality paint. Here's more collectibles. I think this is collectibles, or could be essentials. But anyways, nonetheless, that's how they measure up right there. Yeah, this might be essentials. These are collectibles, but this is Greg Capullo as well. I could be wrong. But speaking of, we'll keep the collectibles right here. We'll bring in DC Direct. Martian Manhunter. DC Direct is another awesome line as well. I think this is one of the best Martian Manhunters that we've ever gotten. Just dope overall figure. If you guys are looking for a good Martian Manhunter, DC Direct did an amazing job with this figure. It's an older figure. The articulation is not that great, but it's just the overall great looking Martian Manhunter. Speaking of Martian Manhunter, we'll bring in... Actually, before we get to Martian Manhunter, we'll compare him with some Mcfarlane figs. So we'll bring in Green Lantern, a figure that I just recently reviewed. So here's Martian Manhunter, and Martian Manhunter with Green Lantern, John Stewart Green Lantern. Obviously, you can see Mcfarlane DC figs. They go very well with any of these figs, man. With any of these lineups, DC Direct, what have you. And yeah, the Mcfarlane DC Direct, and you see they go together very well. Very awesome looking. So that's John Stewart. Bring in Wonder Woman. This is from Death Metal Mcfarlane, and you see the Mcfarlane goes pretty well with Martian Manhunter. To do some more comparisons, here's another DC Direct, one of my other favorites. This is Man-Bat. We'll break out Beast Boy right here. This is Collectables. This is DC Direct right here. Awesome figure. DC Direct has some awesome figures, like every other DC company, you know, out there. You know what I mean? That specializes in DC figures. So I think every company has something good to offer. There are hits and misses with every company. So everyone who's complaining about Mcfarlane, there are a lot of hits and misses with every company. Not every company produces awesome figures. You know what I mean? I mean, there's only one company that I've probably have reviewed most of the figures that I reviewed from the company, and that's NECA. NECA probably guarantees and hits directly, no pun intended, directly every single time, and they hit it out the park every single time. So I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people like to make complaints about Mcfarlane. They want NECA to do DC as well, which I wouldn't mind seeing, but at the same time, would I mind paying, let's say, you know, $30-$40 for just another Batman figure when Mcfarlane is producing Batman figures that are around the same price, around $20. And for all you customizers out there, you know, with Mcfarlane's lack of paint apps, we'll go back to Superman. You know, people have customized Mcfarlane, but then you know, and say so they pay $20 for Mcfarlane and they customize them to their liking. So at the same time, Mcfarlane is giving us what we want, but at the same time, the lack of paint apps, you know, is unlike Mcfarlane, you know, especially from the old school back in the day, Mcfarlane, when he actually had washes on his figures. Now you look at this Superman, there's no paint apps needed for this guy. He's pretty much awesome. Some shading would do, but then again, it is a $20 figure. Why are they going to spend time shading this $20 figure when he just looks good as is? Just a good overall Superman. Okay, guys, so there was my little comparison versus episode. So I say Mcfarlane is doing a great job compared to some of the other, you know, lines that still do DC, compared to Mattel, compared to DC Direct, Designer Series, Collectables. McFarlane is doing a great job. You can tell they're passed out by boredom. They're like, when is this review going to end? Overall, just a great lineup. And there you guys have it. I don't want to break out my entire DC collection, so hopefully I didn't want to make this video as long as possible. But I wanted to show you some of the great figures McFarlane is doing and show you how they measure up and how well they go with the other DC figs. So for those who are complaining about McFarlane, he's actually doing a pretty damn good job compared to some of the other DC figs that we've had in the past. Even though, you know, DC, other toy companies that I showed you have done amazing jobs, you know, McFarlane is doing a great job nonetheless. And it goes with, even though they're 7-inch figures, they still go with a lot of your DC figs. And as you can see right there, you can put them with DC Collectables, Essentials. So McFarlane is not the first, you know, toy company to do, you know, 7-inch DC figures. Obviously, you can see right here, DC Collectables. Mr. Freeze, he actually sizes up well with Superman, Batman back there as well. So you bring in Two-Face right there. You know, Two-Face is a smaller guy, but yet he still measures up nicely. Then you put him with Riddler. And yeah, they go together very well, despite little height differences. When you put them all together, you don't even notice the height differences. So overall, this versus episode, there is no winner. I just want to say McFarlane's doing a good job. He's producing some awesome DC figures for a nice price point of $20. So yeah, they're great. There's a lot of DC figures from a lot of great companies that's been produced in the past and that are currently being produced right now in the present. Alright guys, so if you stood and you lasted this long through this entire video, give yourself an applause. So there was my little lineup, guys, my little versus episode of DC Collectables, Essentials, McFarlane, and so on and so forth. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section, guys. We'll go ahead and leave it at that. I just want to thank you guys for watching. Let me know which one is your favorite toy company, or do you like what everybody is doing? Do you think everybody should have a piece of the pie? And do you like what every company has done and is doing? And do you like what McFarlane is doing? For me, personally, I think McFarlane is a step up from Mattel. I'm glad McFarlane is doing DC figures. It's what got me back into collecting DC figures. So for that, I say McFarlane is definitely a winner. We'll leave it at that, guys. I just want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next review. Peace out. Your friendly neighborhood YouTuber is brought to you by Only Pans on YouTube. Check it out.